Dum 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 dum. Star Wars The Force Awakens, released in 2015, directed by J.J. Abrams, starring Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Adam Driver, Oscar Isaac, Harrison Ford, and Donald Gleeson. I have to start this by saying yes. Thank the Lord. We can finally get over the prequels. Finally. There are some things I really loved about this. For one, the new characters were excellent. They really nailed what was new and exciting about this film. Finn, Rey, Poe, these were all characters that were played with enthusiasm and you felt it. They were really fun and engaging to watch. I found them exhilarating. I really loved the reintroduction of puppets and real locations, practical effects. It really helps in a film about aliens to be able to actually feel like you can reach out and touch these things. Because otherwise there's nothing that you, as a viewer, can ground reality in. There's nothing that you can sympathise with. Your eye is fantastic at picking up small details, and that's why filming films in front of a green screen exclusively doesn't work. This has brilliant humour and exciting action throughout. The whole way through the film, it was really entertaining, and that is excellent, especially after the borefest of the prequels. I have to say, I really loved that there were funny parts that didn't feel obtrusive or annoying. BB-8, for example, when I saw him in the trailer, I thought he was going to be a disaster, but in the film he was great. I was laughing my head off at him, especially his little lighter thumbs up. That was perfect. I also loved how integral to the story Han and Chewbacca were. They could have easily just been throwaway characters used to exploit nostalgia, but they didn't feel like that. They were very well fleshed out. Speaking of which, tons of the nostalgia worked brilliantly. There were great cameos. There was Simon Pegg, Max von Sydow, the Raid guys. Daniel Craig was that stormtrooper who Rey baffled. Mark Hamill, of course, made an appearance at the end as Luke Skywalker. And Carrie Fisher reprised her role as Leia. They also added some great new lore, such as the new lightsaber with the cool crossguard. That was excellent. And that made sense for the character because his lightsaber was amateurish, it was unstable, it was unfinished, and it was unhinged, and that is exactly what Kylo Ren was about. Speaking of Kylo Ren, Adam Driver's character was one of the best parts of this film. He could so easily have fallen into that Vader knockoff category, and the trailers made him look that way, but I really love that they went a different direction with him. He took his mask off, which I was very concerned about. I thought that that was going to be a death knell for this character, but actually he was really interesting. He was so conflicted and he was excellently portrayed. He wasn't at all likeable, but that made me enjoy watching the character. He's a villain whose comeuppance I really want to see. The best thing of all about this Star Wars film, that it had those big cinematic moments that were memorable, that were impactful. Han Solo's death, for one, and for the other, one of the best parts of the film was when Rey took Luke Skywalker's lightsaber and she became a Jedi in that moment, and that was fantastic. There were negatives, however. It lacked focus on some of the characters and some of the plot points. It was oddly structured. There was sort of a climax, but not really. There were a few different climaxes, and I don't think it worked very well. And that's in part due to them trying to appease everyone with this film, which was a very, very difficult task to accomplish. There was no breathing space between the action for characters to develop, to create meaningful bonds with each other that we could believe as an audience. For example, when Han Solo is killed, Leia immediately rushes to hug Rey, and I didn't really feel that that made much sense. Unless they're keeping things hidden, which is possible, but for me, it felt a bit false. I felt like she and Chewie should have really been consoling each other. I didn't like how they rehashed key moments from both Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. You have the Supreme Leader / the Emperor. You have the Death Star / the Starkiller base. And of course, the Starkiller base had to be bigger, it had to be better, except it felt much less menacing. In fact, it was a throwaway plot point. In the first Star Wars, A New Hope, they build up the menace of the Death Star throughout the film. It destroys Alderaan, and you really feel the impact of the devastation it causes. And it's a thing of terror. In this, you have a generic Starkiller base that's thrown in, and it's not the main focus of the characters. Yeah, they're going to go and blow it up. They even sort of joke about it in the film. But it's irrelevant, really. The whole focus is on Kylo Ren. It just feels like it didn't need to be there. They could have done something else. It would have helped cut down on the overcrowding that occurred in this film. I do think that Hux was miscast. I didn't buy into Donald Gleeson as the leader of the First Order Reich. He wasn't convincing, he was too wet, he was too weak. I didn't like his performance. I'd also say that along those same lines, Captain Phasma was kind of throwaway and pointless, even though she looked cool. And worst of all was Snoke. He was this big, non-threatening CGI mess, and I really hope they've got something hidden away for the future of this character, because if he is the big bad, then I'm a bit concerned he didn't work and he sucked, and you cannot have this villain as the big bad for Star Wars. Kylo Ren's great, Snoke, terrible really. So I hope they show us something new about him in the next film and expand upon him. Also, Rey's arc was underdeveloped. She kind of developed force powers spontaneously. Whilst entertaining, it wasn't really explained that well. Then there were loads of other script and continuity errors, which I don't normally look for that sort of thing in these films, but I noticed them in this, like when the Millennium Falcon is taken in by Han Solo's zoo. It then is able to fly away afterwards, and it was obvious to me that it wasn't working when it entered. So in a film of this calibre, you really expect them to be noticing those sorts of things. There was also the fact that R2-D2 Ex Machina occurred, where he just wakes up and gives them the exact piece of the map they need at exactly the right time, which didn't ring true with me. And lastly was Han Solo's death. Han Solo's death lacked the groundwork and the reaction that I expected. Whilst the death was impactful because we love the character, it wasn't because of the drama between him and his son. And that was a misstep for me. The problem is it wasn't built up enough. If this had carried over into a second film, and then it had occurred, then it would have been more powerful because we would have seen the drama between them, but they didn't show us, they just told us. And that wasn't enough to make this a big deal for me in the way that they wanted. And also afterwards, Chewie is angry, obviously, but then he's kind of sidelined. Like, he should be in the depths of despair, I would have thought, given that his lifelong friend had been killed. But Leia barely even consoles him. She goes and consoles Rey, which, again, it felt really odd and didn't make too much sense to me. Final verdict? 7 out of 10. Gold standard film. I really enjoyed this film. It was a fun watch, and whilst it did have its issues, this has more than made up for the prequels and has brought me back into the fold for the Star Wars universe. It's a gold standard film because this is Star Wars. This is the Star Wars legacy, is part of a cinematic staple. I would say it's not platinum because it does have its flaws. They really brought back what was great about Star Wars, from the fanfare to when Rey took the lightsaber. Those were some of the best cinematic moments that I've seen in years, and they really made me feel joy watching them. And that is what cinema is all about, and this film did that. Yes, it had its flaws, but given the anticipation surrounding this film, I think they did a damn fine job. And I can't wait to see the future direction of this franchise. 7 out of 10 rating, gold standard film, and that's my final verdict. I've been Smart Alec, goodbye for now, and until next time.